guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Elizabeth, and I hope this is the last video in the series I'm doing about my mom. I just finished doing the one on Tuesday where they found her body. That's why my face is all red, because I've been crying. I cried through the whole video. So you should go and watch that one before you watch this one, because the story is literally just going to continue and you'll be confused if you just start at the end. So, Wednesday morning, we wake up, and that's the first day you wake up and you're like, I don't have a mom anymore. I for sure don't have a mom anymore. It was hard, but we packed up our stuff, we loaded it in the car, and we had to get going. Life moves on, you can't change it at that point. So I had to drive her brand new car back. We started on our drive home, and everyone else rode back with my brother, and I drove, and my dad was in the passenger seat, and then David was sitting behind me in the car there, and I just casually just cried the whole way back. It's hard. Before we could get going though, we had to stop back at the visitor center to go over last minute things and talk about where my mom's body was and how we were going to transport it back to Ohio, and if they could start embalming her and everything with the autopsy and everything like that. So I had to call the funeral home and give them permission to start embalming her body. That was hard. Everything was hard. But I distinctly remember on the way back, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it without, a mom anymore. How am I going to do anything? And I remember, starting to think about stuff wow, her birthday's in a couple weeks, that's going to be horrible. Mother's Day is going to be awful. And the first thought that pops into my brain is, wow, Elizabeth, why don't you just have a baby of your own, and then Mother's Day won't be hard anymore, because even though you won't have a mom, you'll be a mom, and it'll be okay. And I was like, that's some really stupid logic right there, because that won't solve anything. If anything, that would make my life as a mom a heck of a lot harder if I decided to jump on the train of motherhood as soon as I lost my own mom. But I was like, I just thought it was funny that would just pop right into my head. And even David said something like that. He was like, well, I mean, we could just have kids. And I was like, in reality, that sounds like a pretty band-aid. You just put over something, but it's not really big enough to cover anything, and it just come off later, and then the whole thing is just scarred and ruined, and it's not even a good idea. But believe it or not, that was both of our first thoughts. Oh gosh. Okay, so when we got back, I don't know if I mentioned it in any of the other videos or not, but we had been renting our house from some family members for 13 years. At this point in time, I was the only person who lived with my mom. My sister lived up in Indiana, and my brother, the majority of the time, lived with my dad. My parents were divorced. But we had gotten a call the Tuesday that she went missing that we had to be moved out of our house because they had sold it already. So I pull up. Everyone else got back before me because I had to stop at the visitor center to call people and worry about all that. But I pull up back at my house. There are 9 cars in my driveway and in my front yard. Literally people just taking stuff out of my house and moving it out, putting it on trucks and driving it away. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what it is. I'm overwhelmed about everything already, and then all these people are just taking all of the stuff in my house and just taking it away. That was horrible. I think, it's one thing to lose your mom and be in charge of, planning her funeral and making the tough decisions and, dealing with her going missing and trying to figure out what you're going to do with school in your future now that all this has happened. But it's a whole nother thing to add moving out of the house you have lived in for 13 years, all right at once on top of that. Her car was brand new, and that's the one thing, I was like, okay, well, maybe I can keep the car, and that'll kind of, way that I can, like, connect with her. Be a way that I can still connect with her, be, like, I don't know. And the car was getting taken away because I couldn't afford a payment that expensive for so long. Because at this point I was still in school and I don't have like a real job, and so, you know, going to school was what I did every day, 9 to 5, and I wouldn't have a way to pay for the car. So I had to get rid of the car. Obviously I don't have her anymore. And then I also had to move out of my house. And so, for everyone else, this wasn't a big deal. But for me, this tore me apart. This was so hard to do. I wanted just, like, time to, like, be there with her stuff. And I remember before Elliot and I left to go down to North Carolina for the search, I remember standing in her room and remembering it smelled like her and closing the door because I was like, if this doesn't turn out, I want to be able to come back and stand in her room and make it smell like her. When I had already gotten back, her door was open and there were people already taking her stuff out. And that was really hard for me. But I mean, you have to do it. I had to move. I didn't have a choice. Couldn't keep the house. Can't afford a car. Obviously can't afford a house. It was already sold. So, I guess I should say that at this point my mom was aware that we were moving. I was not. I was told that it was a possibility, but not until after Christmas. And so, I didn't know that this would all happen, like, right away. In reality, it was probably good that I couldn't just sit there and, like, cry laying in her bed for weeks and weeks and weeks and never clean out her stuff and never do anything, like, with the house. But we took all of her clothes and all of her stuff, packed it up in boxes and had it out that day. So it was kind of just, you know, the regular house, like kitchen stuff and my stuff after that, but that was very, very difficult for me. We did go see my grandma that day because she had just been up in arms about the whole thing, and so it was nice to see her and hug her. And she said that she had already asked my mom to give her a sign that she had made it and she was okay. And she said she got a little hummingbird, flew into her yard, and she'd never seen a hummingbird in her yard before, but her yard is beautiful, and my mom had just gotten her a hummingbird feeder. And so she was like, oh, that's Susie, we're good, that's okay, like, I know she's fine. So that was nice to hear her say that, but I don't know, it was hard. We had people moving stuff out of our house for a few days. I did end up getting until November 1st to move out. And I was there every day. I did not leave my house for that whole month, except for, like, I went to go get, like, food and stuff. But, like, I wouldn't leave my house. I wouldn't go over to anyone else's house. David would come over and be with me so I wouldn't be alone, but, like, I wanted to be in there every single minute because I did not want to leave. I remember that night, the first night we got back, my sister was still going to stay there. Elliot got all of the rest of his stuff that was there out that day also. Emily went to go visit my cousins that night and hang out with them, and David wasn't there that first night for like a couple hours. And so I remember that night I ran through my house and just screamed and screamed and screamed for my mom, and I sat in her bed and I just cried and cried. And then I was like, girlfriend, you gotta get yourself together because you can't do this. Like, you can't change this. You gotta be strong and you gotta do this. And so that was it for that. There were some nights where I would sit there and lose it. Absolutely lose it. I'd put on that song that I talked about in the last video and I would lose it. I just have to keep telling myself This will get better. Tomorrow will be easier, but it's just so hard. I'm just sitting here torturing myself. The what ifs will drive you absolutely insane. So we had set up a GoFundMe for the funeral, and we were able to have her funeral and transport her body back and have an open casket. Because she had been found in the water, her body was really nicely preserved. In reality, people keep telling me, like, this is the most horrific situation they can ever imagine, and how can you still be positive about it? And I have to tell them, you have to be positive, because her body was in perfect condition. You know, it wasn't living, but it was, like, in great condition for being out there a week. No animals had gotten to it. You know, we found her. Could you imagine not ever finding her? You would have to decide, like, when should I leave, or when is too long to stay, or, you know, all of those what if thoughts, like, what if she was, like, taken away or abducted or something. And I'm so thankful that we found her. I didn't really find her, but I'm so thankful that the search team found her. I'm so thankful she was not eaten by a bear. One of the guys who was actually on the team that found her had been on a search mission, I think 3 weeks prior, and he went up over, like, a crest and looked down, and he could see a bear eating the guy that they had found. And so I could not imagine that. I could not imagine hating bears for the rest of my life. I just could not. I could not imagine that. That would be horrific. So I'm very thankful we found her. I'm very thankful that, you know, her body was in the shape that it was. So we used the GoFundMe money to pay for the funeral. Today's my mom's funeral. I used the flowers from that. I did so many things to help preserve them. I actually filmed a video about it. So when that's up, I'll link it down below also. The funeral was the first time that I had really seen her body. We had an open casket. We actually had to turn people away. There were so many people who showed up to it. And we were jam-packed for like 4 hours. The guy said that it would fly by and 4 hours would feel like not enough time. And man, he was so right. Like, funeral was a whirlwind. People kept asking me at the funeral why I didn't cry. It's because Emily and my cousins went to buy waterproof mascara that morning because they were worried about crying, and they were like, do you want some? And I was like, no, I'm not wearing waterproof mascara because I don't want to cry. This has been a nightmare for me for 2 weeks now, and everyone else is just now hearing about it. But I've got to start fixing myself, you know? What has happened since then? So I was in grad school for physical therapy. I was in my 2nd semester. The week before everything happened, I had actually come home crying because I was like, I'm not sure this is what I want to do with my life. This doesn't really make me so excited like it does everyone else, and I'm not sure that this is going to be for me. So I got back, and after missing like 2 weeks of school, I sat down with my advisor and I was like, what are my options? Obviously I can't just like catch up. Like, grad school is so vigorous and it is so hard, and it takes so much motivation. And at this point, I couldn't do it. I couldn't give that time and dedication and thought and level of caring that it would need for me to be successful. So it's like, me coming back right now is out of the options because I can't do that. And so we talked about it, and I have a spot in next year's class if I want to go back. I've also been looking into other careers, so I've been looking at going into orthotics and prosthetics because that's something else I can do with my degree. And I think that sounds like a lot of fun. You know, you deal with a lot of people. If you lose a limb, usually it's a pretty tragic situation, and obviously I'm good with tragic situations, man. They keep happening, so I just got to keep going through them. I feel like I would really enjoy that. I'm also looking into being a mortician, because if seeing my mom's body in a casket didn't really bother me, and working in a human cadaver lab all summer didn't really bother me, I think that that might be something that I could be successful at and enjoy. And obviously I love my photography. If I could keep getting the clients I'm getting right now and be successful at it, like, that would literally be the dream. Like, that would be so awesome. So that's kind of my update on what's happened with me. what I'm going through. I'm, pursuing YouTube because that makes me happy. I'm pursuing photography because that makes me happy. I'm planning my wedding because that makes me happy. I'm planning my elopement photos because that makes me happy. I'm trying to do things that make me happy and not really worry about the problems with the future or anything. Obviously, I'm the oldest. I'm the one who has to deal with everything for the estate and my mom's bank accounts and giving the car back and figuring out everything with probate court because she didn't have a will and life insurance and all of that fun stuff. And so that has been keeping me incredibly busy because it's like a full-time job trying to figure out all that stuff out when you have no idea what's going on. I'm so thankful for all the people who donated to the GoFundMe. That really helped us right in the beginning, getting everything taken care of, and everyone who sent us gift cards for food and stuff because obviously I don't really cook. So that was really appreciated. All those people have just been there for me, and yeah, it's hard. I do want to say that 1 week, or I guess it was more like 2 weeks after, her funeral was on a Tuesday, and the Saturday after her funeral, I went back down to Gatlinburg. My friends and I had booked a weekend trip there months ago, and I was like, girlfriend, you paid money to go, you have to go, you have no choice, you'll have fun with your friends. So I decided to go, and I ended up meeting up with Joe again. He took the day off work to go hiking with me and a few of my friends. They're actually going to be in my wedding now. They agreed to be my bridesmaids. And that was so helpful. We really got to walk through the trail, and I got to ask questions, and I could see, what was going on where, and the tape was still up from the search, so I could see that, what points they had searched, and it made me feel so much better. We had walked to a point, we got to a tag on a tree or whatever, and it had been marked for the day that she went missing, and he looked at me and said, I know for a fact she went off trail that night because we walked past the places that we think she'd gone in, and we were standing there, and he pulled out the thing. He was like, look, this was marked for that night. They made it all the way out here that night calling her name, and they didn't see her. So she was off trail that night. And that made me feel so much better knowing that, they did go out there that night, and, it reassured the fact in my mind. I had asked Joe, I was like, when do you think that she died? Because the autopsy didn't say anything, and he was like, I think she died that night, and I was like, okay, me too. I hope she did at least. But yeah, so that was very therapeutic for me to go back out there, spend time with my friends. One of the huge things that has changed for me since all of this happened is that I hate being outside at night. I hate the dark, whether it's running out to grab something from my car, that I need it. I'm just literally in my driveway. I hate that. I hate it. I hate walking, near trees in the dark. It's very scary for me. It's very traumatic, and I think that's because, going down the mountain in the dark, the worst thoughts would just go through my mind, and it was night was horrible. It was very traumatic for me, and I was talking to one of my aunts, and she was like, I hate nighttime, and I was like, me too. It's the worst now. Yeah, but I think I told you guys everything. I think that's, my story. That's it. That's it for the story about everything that's happened. I feel better being able to talk about it and run through the details and everything. I hope I'm not forgetting anything, but thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for supporting me and encouraging me. I really appreciate it. Here's to hopefully more positive videos moving forward. I have some filmed about my wedding and all sorts of stuff. So if you're interested in those, remember to subscribe to my channel and turn on the little notification bell, and then give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.